rocking the Cypress shirt.
Yeah?
Totally clutch. I'm going
not corny at all. But I feel so bad for Cypress because no one sees it. It's hidden. So
I should wear mine. We could be twins on the interview.
They've been good to me. They gave me another unit. Did I tell you about that?
They did what?
They gave me another unit, so I have 2 rigs. So they gave me a unit for both rigs. So that was super good. Yeah, thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah, I think they're lucky to have you. You're lucky to be connected. I don't recommend people that I don't think are beneficial for my sponsors. I don't do that. So I'm happy for them and you. Yay, Kim. It's so ridiculous. Wow. I'm just happy. Thank you for doing this. I say that every time, but I'm always so happy when people are willing to do this with me. I mean, the main goal is to get information and insight and education for anybody who watches this in the skydiving community, or even someone who's just looking for growth and life coachy type advice. Specifically, I like to always get something for young jumpers. So I'm going to get to some of the earlier parts of your story, but I think the cool place to start with you is that people I find are usually super curious about the whole cutting away situation, right? And how people have professional careers and other sort of real world avenues and other expertise, and what sort of drives the person to do that, to leave and go the route of professional skydiving or full-time skydiving. And so I'm curious, what's your career, what's your professional background, and what made you make the choice to go full-time into skydiving?
Well, I'm a teacher by trade, so I've been teaching for 12 years. And for a long time, I was thinking that I need to do something else. I can't be in the same school and teaching and finding myself being 50 and not having really done anything else. So I knew I wanted to do something, and I was looking for a couple of 3 years to do something else, but then I did not find a job that would give me 15 weeks off a year and pretty stress-free environment. I know teaching can be stressful, but that's the kind of stress that I'm used to, and it doesn't stress me out. The other stuff stresses me out.
What other stuff? What do you mean?
Sorry?
What other stuff stresses you out? What do you mean?
Normal stuff, money issues or too much work and stuff like that. But the stuff that is considered stressful in teaching is not something that really stresses me.
Gotcha. Like talking in front of people and
or
lessons or putting it together, stuff like that.
Being worried that kids won't do good and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, but no. So I really find an option that I would be ready to do. But then when my wife got a job abroad, I realized that is my chance to take 1 year leave from my work and try this skydiving. So the timing was pretty good because I had just started doing quite a lot of events and organizing quite a lot. So I had a good background to just continue doing it. So the timing was pretty good. So when we talk about cutaways, it's not really a cutaway. It's I've cut away at 10,000 feet with my third canopy. So I still have, both canopies going and I have plenty of altitude. So I have a backup plan. So it's definitely not, a total release.
Yeah, I think, that's interesting that's your perspective of cutting away. I think the way I look at that term, I think it's just the choice of going into professional skydiving or into some kind of career or passion pursuit full time. Yeah. So for me, my cutaway experience was absolutely the same thing. I was working at the investment bank and kind of knowing I was either going to go professional skydiving and be happy with where I was in the sport or not, you know what I mean? Get an MBA and sort of go that route, or go and and decide to be more full-time in the sport. But that was like 8 months of lead up and conversation and designing my role at Skydive Elsinore. So I think that there are ways that it doesn't have to be a reckless cutaway. I think that's actually not smart. And I wouldn't actually advise people to do that at all. So your story just more supports that. It's great because you can now, it sounds like, engage in skydiving professionally in this year or two or whatever you're doing with a sense of security and calm and actually enjoy it versus freaking out going, holy shit, what am I going to do if this doesn't work out for me?
Yeah.
Very cool.
I think it makes me be a much better organizer when I have this comp, that I know that if it starts to feel that it's not my thing, I can anytime go back.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you as an organizer. Like, what do you do? What do you coach? How you like? Where do you? What's your skydiving work life look like?
Well, I do mostly skills camps and boogies and a little bit of tunnel, but that has been the one thing that I've kind of been forced to, or that hasn't really. I mean, I did quite a lot of tunnel in Finland, but now it's more or less just boogies and skills camps.
Cool.
So I organize on free fly events. So it's a lot of like the new stuff, the dynamic flying, tracking, and which is pretty cool. The sport has changed, so it's actually a lot of belly flying. Belly is coming back. We do stuff now that if I would have suggested the jumps that we do now, like they're pretty routine jumps. If I would have suggested that 4 years ago, they would have kicked me out. There was no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to fly belly. And most of the people were actually such bad belly flyers that would have basically been the end of the jump because their belly was so bad. But now the tunnel and all the low speed stuff has actually brought a belly back, and it's that's super cool.
It's super cool. I love that. It's funny, like my tunnel experience is almost entirely high speed at free fly stuff anyway. Obviously ton of belly experience in 4-way and stuff like that. But it's cool, like, cause it's a whole new part that even like with my duration and what version of experience in the sport, I'm totally learning new things. I was flying in the tunnel the other day. I'm trying to learn how to outface carve in the tunnel. I can't even do that yet, like, and I'm excited because I feel like it just shows how much things can ebb and flow and change. And it's like whatever people are doing that are fun to jump with is kind of what the younger people are going to be drawn to. And that's cool because belly flying maybe will come back, or maybe 4-way will come, like it's anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So so you mentioned obviously you're from Finland. Mm-hmm. Has a warm place in my heart. No. Love my Finnish friends. I worked in Finland a couple of years.
That's where we met.
That's watching now. So I wanted to ask you actually about that, like about cultural differences. And I know you and I have talked about this as friends, but tell me what your perception is culturally in terms of like, what is it like jumping in Europe and Scandinavia versus jumping in the States? Like, are there any stark contrasts? Is it totally the same? Like, what can people expect if they end up deciding to travel over there from the US or vice versa?
Well, I see there's a different kind of jump. If we go to the jumping, it's different kind of jumping. In the US, it's a lot more vertical stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think in Europe, there's a lot more of the dynamic, low speed stuff. Then we have the exception, maybe the Fly for Life guys in Florida that they do. I mean, they pretty much created much of the stuff. So that's a difference. But then, I mean, the cultural stereotypes are definitely, you can see that. I mean, if you have a group of Germans or a group of Finns, a group of French people, or a group of Americans, it's very different. The attitude and the energy. I was just jumping with a group of Germans, and they are German.
What do you mean? Like stark, like don't say anything? What do you not? And this is not a disparaging comment on Germans or.
No. But it's like they're more. It's a structure and even though they're not like typical Germans, but you could definitely see the difference. And here, I've told you, we laughed about this story a zillion times, but when you came to Finland, when I explained to you that you can't expect the Finns to be American excited, because
Yep.
it's happen. It
So
happens
funny.
in the car when they're drunk, but it will not happen during the jumping day. When I was jumping now with the Germans, there was Estonians, which are pretty much the same as the attitude of Estonians and Finns are pretty much the same.
Okay. And what's the, just to clarify for people who are watching who don't understand what Finnish culture is like what is the typical way, like how, tell the story of how I was organizing. I would love to hear your version of that, only because it's such a stark contrast of how I am as an American bubbly whatever comparatively. So
yeah, so I took you aside, I remember, and I told you that you can't expect the Finns to be as excited as Americans most of the time are, and it's still okay. They're still gonna like it, but just don't expect anything.
Yeah, don't expect a response.
Yeah, like a
confirmation of excitement. Yeah. I remember being like, do you guys love this? Yeah. Do you hate this? Is this the worst skydive of your lives? Is this okay? Like anything, any kind of response so that I know. And then once you told me that though, I was able to be like, oh, okay, cool. They're not going to respond. Yeah. No problem.
No, that's very, very typical. There was actually an article in the Finnish newspaper about this. A Finnish man said that it's so, he lived abroad, and he said that it's so good to be back in Finland where you can really be Finnish. And he was telling this story when he took his car to change his tires. And he went into the shop, he opened the trunk so the guys could see that he was gonna, it was winter time, so it was obvious what he was gonna do. And then he went in and paid, took a coffee, and came back, and the car was done, and the wheels were put back in, and all this happened without saying anything. No words were communicated during this whole process. No good day, how are you, what do you want, what can we do for you, sir? Like nothing, not a word was said. So and that was awesome. That was 5 Finnish men on both sides of the business deal. And yeah, no one needed to say anything, and they that was good.
That's so funny to me. So funny to me. I do wonder. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's a common joke all the time, that this is a Finn getting news that he's his mother has died, and this is the face of a Finn just winning in the lottery. And that's
I think that you're
back to Portugal. There was this Estonian group. They were doing a big way, Estonia, and I knew a couple of guys. And then I asked them after like 3 days, so how was the record going? And they said, yeah, we broke it like a couple of hours ago. It's like, really? Because I had not heard anything, not a word. So you imagine, I don't know how. It wasn't super big, maybe 30 people maybe. But they broke their national big wave record. But no cheering, no screaming, no yelling, no like, yoo-hoo, we did it. It was nothing. They just continued jumping.
Do you feel excitement? I mean, that might be a stupid question, but I would imagine as a human being, you feel it, right? Like you feel it. I mean, I think you're a little different almost because maybe you've been around more expressive or whatever. Maybe I've just gotten in there, but like.
No, I think I'm a little different, but no, definitely. But I definitely feel that it takes more. It takes more to get a Finn excited. But then that's what people say, that it maybe takes more, but then again, it's more authentic, the feeling. So when a Finn is excited, you know that, okay, now he's actually, this is a real feeling.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like, I do think it just so varies person to person, culture to culture. Yeah, because like I'm I mean, I maybe am a weirdo, but I am genuinely excited when I'm expressing excitement. I'm just very expressive. So maybe I'm on the other end of the scale of expressiveness, or feeling, you know, like the extremity of feeling. And it's interesting because I was even having a conversation with my roommate the other day, and we were talking about, I mean, this is a different conversation in general, but how it can be like the extremity of feeling. Like if you have a lot, like really high highs, you often have the really low lows. So I wonder if the Finnish scale or the cultures that are less expressive or less like prone to be triggered into feeling, whether it's the same both directions, you know what I mean? Like just that kind of stuff fascinates me, but neither here nor there. I would imagine skydiving helps because it's so awesome.
No, no, I mean, this is, of course, stereotyping. Well, there's a lot of Finns that are not typical Finns, but I smile every now and then.
I love it when you make fun of me, because then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, there he is. Yeah, you can do it. Cool. So tell me, so one thing that the reason I'm excited to have you on is obviously just because you're awesome and cool at skydiving, but because I feel like it's just so great. We're a good example, I feel like, of friendship in the sport and how it can come in unlikely places and ways, and also like not endure, that's the wrong word, I guess it can endure, but meaning like it can last and grow over time. Like I love that about you and Uti, like as being my friends, even though when was I last over there? 2011 or 12? It was a while, but like I think no, 2012 was Dubai, but yeah. Like 2011 I feel like was the last time I organized in Finland, so it's been a while. Yeah, for sure. But we've been able to maintain our friendship and even I'd say grow our friendship over time. And I don't know, I almost want you to speak to that, like in the sport, if we're thinking about talking about things that would be useful for young people watching this who are learning from experience, what would you say about skydiving friendships and how you've seen them sort of form and exist and last?
Oh, I could write I'm going to write an essay or a book about this, because it's kind of a given that if you're a skydiver, it's like you're kind of the skydiving family and friends and yada, yada, yada. And so you kind of get a certain friendship for free. And this, I think for Finns, this is confusing because that is not, that is like a different attitude that Finns have. So that is sometimes a bit confusing because then, of course, the skydiving society is as any normal group of people anyway. So however much we talk about skydiving family and so on, you pick and choose and you have your inner circle and so on.
Absolutely.
That's what's cool with organizing and doing lots of events, that you meet a lot of people. And with some people, how you can connect in 15 minutes, you get a feeling that boom, okay, it just happened. And then with some people that you've seen year after year after year after year, and you get along, but it's just, there is nothing really more to it. And it's really hard to tell what it is, why you get that connection with certain people, and why it seems kind of on both sides that there's no interest whatsoever to. So that's actually pretty cool, and it's cool to see this cat because it's like life, but in a miniature format.
Yeah, microcosm of community. Totally. I actually just wrote a column about this idea of tribe and how I think it can be confused that skydiving is in fact the tribe when I contest it is not. That like I could pull the art. I'll send you the article or whatever. I'll post it, link it or something. But how it's just that I think a lot of skydivers have similar values in what matters to them and what they stand for and what they live into. And so I feel like the people that and this is just my guess, my take, is that like the people that we then connect with and like sort of see something in or resonate with, those are the people that have similar core values to us in terms of how they you know, think about life or approach life or care about other people or contribute or approach their work and stuff like that. Like I've had loads of conversations about this with other skydiving friends. And it just, for me, I feel like seems like a lot of skydivers have that, but not every skydiver does. So like, yeah, there are some skydivers out there that are total assholes. They are not a part of my tribe. Just because they're a skydiver doesn't mean I'm going to be like, oh yeah, come on over. I'll be pleasant and professional in a professional role, certainly, but it doesn't mean I'm going to let an asshole near me in a close relational sense, which is kind of cool. Like it's, I think, important to make that distinction, but it's also like, I think when you find those connections too, it's important to care about maintaining them. Just so you know, peeps, Kim is awesome and has sent me postcards over the years, which make me very happy and have warmed my heart. And I think it was, how did that even start? I forget. Did I like say I was going to mail you something or something like that?
I think it started with that. Yeah, it was, I think you mentioned something that it's cool to get postcards because you don't really get them anymore.
Yeah, because of emails or something like that. I can't even remember.
I actually have one that I bought again, because I mean, that's how I do it. I buy a postcard and then it's in my bag for a year and I write every now and then a little bit. And I think I actually bought one, but I can't, it's somewhere.
One of the postcards you sent me and a card that Jim Hickey sent me are sort of, I made them into a little artsy fartsy thing and they're in a frame in my home. So that's love. But anyway, let's keep this thing going. So let me see. What else did I want to ask you? Oh, yeah. So let's go back to the skydiving stuff and your actual path to like, how did you get into skydiving and what's your like learning path? Again, I'm sort of asking from the perspective of helping young jumpers and just illuminating possibilities through your story.
Right. Well, I started, it was the basic, my friend jumped a tandem and I wanted to jump a tandem. And then I took the AFF like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, you were one of those like, yep, doing this.
Yeah, for sure. And I started back in the good old days when the tunnel wasn't really an option. So I got into head down without the tunnel, which was a very rocky road. I did lots of crying.
Me too.
Yeah. But then basically pretty soon the tunnel came in. And that's, of course, nowadays it's nearly impossible to get on a decent level without the tunnel. It's kind of expected.
It takes a lot of skydives and a lot of time and money.
I would say, it's for some people, maybe. For me, it would have been impossible. The tunnel with everything.
Do you feel like you're not as natural of a flyer or learner? Why do you say that?
No, maybe not as natural a flyer. I don't know how you would say, but definitely, I don't think I was super bad, but I definitely wasn't one of the most talented ones. But the tunnel is for sure the way to go.
Yeah.
I've met a few people that actually are still saying that they just want to jump, they don't want to do the tunnel, and
like they've never done tunnel.
Yeah, they've never done tunnel.
Okay.
But they still have the burn to be good.
Yeah.
And that is, I always tell them that, well, you got to do what floats your boat, but I don't recommend it. Tunnel is the key. Yeah,
it's just efficiency. And also I feel like you don't have to do one or the other. That's what's cool. I'm more in the skydiving camp myself. I like skydiving more than I like tunnel flying, but I like that the tunnel makes me a better skydiver. It helps facilitate more fun for me in the sky with friends that I want to fly with, which is always my major goal anyway. So like, yeah, I echo your advice to do it as avenue to more skydiving fun, if that's your goal.
And I think the sport has actually now like it's going into two separate sports actually. So you have the skydiving and then you have the tunnel.
Yes.
I had a 3-month break from tunnel flying. That's the longest break I've had for probably 6 years.
Yeah.
And I just went to the tunnel yesterday, and oh man, did it feel bad. It was,
I flew with the Red Bull team the other day, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so terrible. This is hilarious. I hadn't flown in, Well, actually, that's not true. I'd flown in Westchester probably 6 months prior, but before that, it was like years. It was like 3 years.
Yeah.
Dude. But it's awesome. It's great to be humbled. It's great to get in and around people who are better than you. Like, actually, I really love that. As much as you have to eat the humble pie and kind of be tortured as you're learning a new skill, it's the most fun I had flying with them the other day was when I was following Amy and she was sort of teaching me this sort of very basic dynamic routine. I hardly have any experience doing that in the tunnel. So that was like super fun, sort of different kinds of, you know, within my current skill ability. Like that was fun, super fun, because I felt like I was learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely if I get the feeling of getting too cocky in the skydiving, it's just go to the tunnel and that will take you down.
What are your goals? What are your future goals in skydiving?
I think now, and I really like that I don't really have any goals. You know, I'm just having fun, and that feels really, really, really good.
Awesome.
That put a lot of pressure on me with the, you know, the pressure of no, I need to be at a certain level. I need to get better, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And we talked about stress earlier, and that was for sure something that took away a little bit of the fun.
Yes.
I've never been someone who likes to compete. I love to train, but I'm not really into competing. I have there's no burn in me to stand on the podium and getting a medal. That's not my thing. So that has felt really good when I don't have that pressure. Mm-hmm. There's this American comedian. He's with that plays the piano with the red rastas. I think he's British. Actually,
I should know this because I'm such a fanatic.
Well, he had this speech on one of the colleges, and he said that making like small goals, like short-term goals, that's good, and that's basically what I'm doing. So yeah, that's
great. I mean, I think that's totally legit. I mean, I've said this countless times in the last probably 5 years. My competitive edge, because I used to be totally into competition because I really enjoy measurable goals and I really enjoy the team experience. I can't recommend the team experience more, and like learning how to detach from outcome in competitive arenas and stuff like that. I feel like that's really an avenue and a way we can earn mental toughness, but I'm with you. It is tough. It is excruciating sometimes when you're like really managing that performance anxiety and just not wanting to let your teammates down and all this stuff. It's a lot of emotional pressure. And for me, I'm like, yeah, I sort of feel like I don't really want to experience that anymore. You know, at least for now. Am I maybe going to compete, maybe take on a two-way team or whatever, something more manageable? Maybe. I'm open, but I'm with you that like I'm enjoying having fun and having not as serious goals in my skydiving at the moment too. It's pretty cool.
And I think that's changing the sport as well. That I see that more and more during events. That it's more people train in the tunnel, and then they maybe go and compete in the sky or in the tunnel. But to boogies and skills camp, they kind of come to have fun, and they kind of come to move the tunnel skills to the sky.
Cool.
So I see a much more relaxed environment. I remember when you were coaching in Finland, and you were, I think that was the year when I was coaching as well. I think that was one of my first coaching gigs ever. And you were jumping with the top group. And I remember them just being, you know, they were nasty to each other. They were screaming, they were yelling because, you know, you weren't on level and you did not go to this, and you blah, blah, blah. And that was very common back in the days. And I think it was, it was more competitive because you kind of had to prove yourself in a different way in the sky. And then the jumps were also, because it was more vertical stuff. Right. So it was, the jumps were more, okay, let's build around, and then we mix it up, and then half of you go to head up.
Yep.
And then when we came that far, and then that one guy messed up that one transition, and jump was over. And everyone else just waited for that one guy to, come on, where are you? And then the pressure was pretty hard on certain people during a jump.
Sure.
And I think the jumps they're more dynamic. So if you mess up a little bit, it's not the end of the jump. It's just, okay, you didn't make it, but we continue the jump.
Yeah.
And that has relaxed a little bit. So I see it's very rare nowadays that you see people screaming at each other or yelling. It's a little bit, of course, always, but it's different from 5 years ago.
I'm glad to hear that, because I feel like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to each their own in terms of how their team dynamic functions. You know what I mean? Like, some people I think could reflect on being enraged and yelling at each other. I've certainly had experiences like that inside my team experience, but it's not about skill, more about engagement and dynamics. But like, it's for me that I don't like that. You know, I don't think most people really respond well to that kind of conflict, you know, and that kind of pressure. So I think even if the goals haven't changed, maybe they have, maybe people are not as intense and maybe they don't have the goals, or maybe they do and they're just approaching them differently, which
I think for sure, I mean, I'm talking boogies. I think for sure, if you look at the you know, who are competing,
yeah,
or the tunnel flyers, they are for sure. That's that I think they are competing hardcore. So that's going to be the same. But I've seen tunnel flyers and competitors doing the I mean, it's hard. You got to be good, and then for a lot of people, they know that this is their chance. They have to show that they're good because their work demands it.
right.
If they're not doing good in competition, they're not going to get students. They're not going to get the name, and that of course puts even more pressure on it. And
It's cool though, because like the agony does deliver the elation when the goal is achieved, you know. So it's like, it is a risk, but it also is a risk for purpose. Yeah. So it's like I don't want to completely say, okay, don't make competition or training sound super torturous, because I think it's some of the best of my memories. It's a lot. It requires a lot of commitment, a lot of purposeful, intentional energy, a lot of cutting other stuff out of your life to focus fully on that, spending your money there. You know, it's funny, like when we talk about like making money skydiving and stuff, I never really worry about that because I know how much I spent to get where I currently am and what I still spend. You know, I still spend money on skydiving and I'm happy to do it in the ways that I want to. But it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, if they only knew how much actual money, I'm still in the hole in skydiving big time. But well worth it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get rich doing organizing boogies. Bring the big but no, that's all good.
Yeah. So tell me, okay, so here's sort of the last thing I like to ask people too is, so given the new jumper focus, like what's something from your experience that some advice that you would give new skydivers?
Canopy control. I think that's what I see that is freaking me out a little bit. And I mean, of course, this sport is it's egos. We all have our little ego, and coming to the drop zone, being a badass in the tunnel with your 200 jumps, and then you jump with people that are not as good in the sky as you, but they have 2,000 jumps and they're jumping, a small canopy and swooping, and then for the young guys to kind of realize that no. Once I open, I suck.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, from being, the top dog, I go down to the lowest of the low, landing furthest away with my big ass canopy, and I really don't have a clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And being able to accept that and give yourself time to learn to fly your canopy. That is, I think, the biggest risk that I see.
That's huge. I think excellent, amazing advice. And I feel like needs to be illuminated and re-illuminated and re-illuminated. Like, I feel like talking about this over and over, because I feel like I've talked about this before. I'm doing this virtual skydiving coaching thing now, like where I have a group and some young jumpers are joining me on calls like these. It's been good. And we're talking about stuff like that as well, because it's so true. It is, and again, it goes back to like the mental part of this whole thing of, I love how you just described that, how it's really a mental thing of like understanding this is one thing and this is another thing. And to really be ready to mentally, sure, you can be a badass, confident, super, super hot dog up here safely, obviously, always safety underpins everything. But then to really, really be cool with and know that it's coolest to be humble where you need to be humble. Yeah. Good stuff.
I think the canopy, that takes, especially with the tunnel flyers, because they get their skills pretty fast. I mean, if you're a young 25-year-old who's been doing lots of sports, you go to the tunnel, you go all in a year, you're going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to have to pretty much live on the drop zone.
Yeah.
To be a good canopy pilot after a year.
Yep.
That doesn't come as quickly.
You only can get that. Sorry?
You have to be current with the canopy. So if you have a half a year break and you're not that good from the beginning, then it's that's going to affect you a lot.
And the only way to get that experience is skydiving. There's no other way you can do it. You have to jump out of an airplane and land a parachute in order to learn that. Yeah. It's funny. I also remind people who have a lot of free fall skills and are doing the bigger jumps and the bigger waves, is it's the same stuff, is that like, you cannot, just because you have good free fall skills, you don't necessarily have the pictures cataloged for a 60-way 3-plane shot thing. Like, that is a totally different visual and environment to learn. And so I would encourage people who do have those kind of badass tunnel skills and are going that direction to go to those skills camps, to put yourselves in the environment to learn that environment. You know, that kind of stuff sort of always makes me go a little bit like, I hope they're doing the camps. Get the pictures in their brain to, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Back in the days, you could basically just look at the equipment that people had and see what canopy they were flying. And you basically knew how good they were in the sky because they were pretty much connected. If you flew velocity 90, okay, hey, he's going to be good. He's going to be doing this down. He's going to be doing this. He's going to be doing that because he has a certain amount of jumps. And now it's it doesn't mean anything.
That's so true. So true. Interesting, right? God, the sport is so changed. It has so changed and evolved. It's amazing. Well, my friend, to keep this at a reasonable timeline, is there anything else that you just have to deliver the audience that I haven't asked you about?
I can't think of anything.
If people want to reach out to you, to get in touch, ask you questions, or hire you for an event or coaching, how would they get in touch with you?
Facebook.
So Facebook's best. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, I feel like there's so much more to ask you, but you know, you can only get so much out of 45 minutes. Thank you so much for doing this.
Will do. Thank you.
For helping and for giving your goodness to all of the peoples. Now come visit in New York City. Tell Uti to get your butts over here.
Cool.